here, you fit it. I'll go over there and try that house. Get up. Pull over. Pull over. Get up.
Sure. I went right up to Harger and I said, now look here, Harger, I'm a pretty valuable man and you not. It's about time I got a new deal around this place.
That's right, you are valuable, and it's about time they realized it.
Sure.
Hey, Pop, what's this all about? I want a double order of ham and eggs. Oh, boy, I like ham and eggs. And some oatmeal. Ooh, I like oatmeal. I'll take a big beef steak and a couple of pork chops. Don't you ordinary spinach. And a piece of that chocolate cake. Boy, I like chocolate cake. And a couple of pieces of pie. Ooh, do I like pie. And a couple of those buns. Oh, boy, am I hungry.
All right, take it easy, Jack.
Yeah, take it easy, Jack. Hey, what's the big idea?
All right, kids, come on now. Step back here, Sonny. Give me a chance, will you? No.
Oh, boy! Now dial some nice peppy music, 'cause Daddy'll be home in a few minutes. Okie dokie.
You will find that your breath will be as garbage hauled in open truck.
Darling, what are you trying to do? I can't get nothing but talking. Oh, you can't get anything. There, you see? Daddy'll be home in a minute. I'll tell you what you do. You go into the bedroom and get his slippers and his dressing gown and his pipes for him, huh? Okie dokie. That's a boy.
First, in this TMP philosophy video, and I haven't done one for a while, I'm going to kick it off with a question. Think about it. Are we better now as a nation than we were in the 1930s? Better off now than we were in the 30s. You know, at first glance, the answer would seem to be obvious, right? We had the Depression of the 1930s. It was awful. No one could work. People were destitute. A lot of problems financially in the United States, of course. The Great Dustbowl happened. But maybe if we dig a little bit deeper into that and we look at ourselves as a nation, how we got along, what kind of people were we, how we treated one another, were we better in the 30s than we are now? Now, the springboard for this philosophy video, you've seen the title, is pretty surprising, yeah? Like you, I love YouTube. It is my favorite informational and entertainment site. I'm in YouTube all the time. Though I'm a creator, I click out of genre constantly in things that interest me, watching YouTube videos. And about a month ago, I started clicking on our gang, Little Rascals. So these are the little kids in the 1930s, the black and white short films they made, and they're adorable, as are the kids. And I just started watching these kids. And as I watched, that question came to my mind, as it has often. I mean, I didn't need that video to remind me of it, but it brought it to the forefront again. Are we better now as a nation with what's going on versus where we were in the 1930s? And more importantly, how do we raise our children? And as I watched binge watched, by the way, these Little Rascal videos, and I'll put some links to some in the bottom here. There's a dude named Ken something. He's posted a whole bunch on YouTube, and I really appreciate him doing that. It's awesome. You know, you're going to see some things that are representative of the culture of the 1930s, of earlier Americana. You know, we can look at the Little Rascals and go, well, you know, these kids were staged. They were given lines to say, and they were put in certain situations, of course. But the creator, Hal Roach, really wanted the children to act honestly. And the whole series of Little Rascals, at least under the direction of Hal Roach, was pretty honest. He got the whole idea when he wanted to get away from the Hollywood-esque style of movie making, especially with children. He was looking at I think a lumberyard or something, and these kids are fighting over a stick, and he just looked out of his window and watched this interaction with these kids with one another. The idea hit him. It's like, we need to show kids naturally, the way they are now in the 1930s. So when we watch Little Rascals now, in our day and age, we're actually getting a very honest view of what life was like in the 1930s. Most TV shows are that way. So if we watch a show of our era right now, it's going to be representative of societal mores, of how we are as a society, of maybe some turmoil as we wrestle with certain issues in society. Likewise, we'll see vehicles of the era. We'll see how people lived. Right now, you know, cell phone usage, smart devices, internet usage, texting is all represented throughout all of sitcoms and movies and such. And likewise, back in the Little Rascals, what you're seeing is a slice of life. I believe, an honest representation of the way America was. Never mind the scripting. You still have the children. You still have parenting represented in that era. And people accepted it. I mean, if something would have come out in the Little Rascals, I feel, it was a widely beloved series, by the way, hugely popular. It went from, 1922 to 1944. I think Hal finally sold it to MGM, and they took off with it. And there were cast changes throughout the years, of course, and a little bit different approaches to how the series was done. But it was wildly popular throughout all of its existence. Little Rascals, our gang. You're watching a slice of life of Americana. Was it better than what we have now? And let's focus it in, not so much society as a whole, but let's look at our children. And then the way the children grow up, that's the way society will be. True? I think we can agree on that. What can we learn from Little Rascals? There are some things. Now, I grew up, I think, a lot like the Little Rascals thanks to my mom and dad. I was an Air Force brat. I lived in multiple states. My biggest states that I grew up in were Florida, Alabama, Virginia, and Utah. That's where I spent the preponderance of my time. And as I'm watching these Little Rascals videos, a lot of my memories came back, especially in Florida and Alabama, because that's the way we lived. With my brother, his friends, we would go out and just adventure all day long. And we didn't have internet, we didn't have phones, we didn't have video games, and we didn't need them. We're out there having a blast, having a ball, creating one adventure after another. For instance, super quick, and this will probably be feature length. I think you guys like it as we talk about some really fun stuff. But one of my adventures, and I don't know if I've said this on camera before, is my brother had his friends, and I was a young brother tag along. We stole my dad's lumberjack boots. He had like one or two pair, and we went out on this, believe it or not, like sewage discharge line in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, crabbing at night. That was fun. Yeah, I fell in up to my neck, and there were hammerhead sharks in the area. We saw them that night with our flashlights, which, by the way, were not waterproof and were destroyed on that outing, as were my dad's boots, and we heard about it. Getting back to the Little Rascals, I'm watching these kids get in trouble. I'm like, that was me. I can relate. But then again, that's my generation. What about today's generation? The millennials and those that follow millennials, do they have that upbringing, and do they care? And as a parent, if you're watching this, I think a lot of parents will come to this video, kind of know what the information is. how can we perhaps restructure our parenting to allow this type of adventurous child to be raised, to exist? I think one of the things, and I have a bunch of points I'll talk about, I don't know in what order I'll discuss it, but it's more genuine that way, is we need to allow our children freedom. Watching Little Rascals and their antics, and I'll roll in some inset video if I can find it, it's hilarious of how free children were in the 1930s. And again, I think it is an honest representation. There wasn't a lot of control. They would be in their neighborhoods, and Little Rascals actually centers around a very poor neighborhood where there's not a lot of kids. You do have some rich kids that will be part of the gang, which provides a very fascinating contrast as you see these rich kids want to depart their lofty upbringing to go hang out with kids of their own age and to get muddy and dirty and to play war and to sword fight, to make, fake fire engines and crash and just do what kids want to do. It's interesting. But kids need to be free. And watching Little Rascals, they're free. Again, I understand it is a Hollywood-produced show, The Little Rascals, but again, it is representative of the way children used to be. So they would go free play in the woods, in the creeks. They'd play with frogs. They would make wooden boats. They would take sticks and make guns out of them. And I asked myself, how free are our children today in doing this? Do we program our children too much? For instance, sports. Maybe we feel the need to always have our children in sports and to get accolades and honors, perhaps scholarships if they're really good, and to progress in sports. Maybe it's something academically, maybe it's cheerleading, that I think the modern parent feels the need to program their children in some path. And I kind of disagree with that. I think children, according to their personalities, should be allowed to be free and to explore their own interests, and you should give them the environment to do so safely. Things have changed since the 1930s. Unfortunately, I don't think we can go back in some ways to that era. So can we let, for instance, as shown in Little Rascals, a 2-year-old escorted by a 5-year-old walk around in the woods now? No, you can't do that. Unfortunately, there's too many sexual predators out there and just bad people. And that's sad. We've changed. We've lost some innocence. I may come back to that. But maybe in some other ways we can. Maybe we can go to a family's property, that we can go to a location that is safe for them, that's a playground, and let them be kids. Let them get dirty. Let them get hurt. Let them experience life. Don't program your children so much. Watch the Little Rascals, and perhaps like me, you'll get hooked. You'll start watching, you'll go, my gosh, this is so funny. The kids are so cute. By the way, my favorites are Spanky, Weezer, and Stymie. I love those guys. And my favorite era in the Little Rascals is like the early 30s, when Spanky was like a little kid. Oh my gosh, precocious. He reminded me so much of Tactical Doodle, my oldest son. I mean, he could talk it too. Amazing. And he turned into be a really good actor. Natural and fluid and funny. Naturally funny. Watch him, though. Watch the freedom of the Little Rascals. And maybe we can bring some of those elements back to our own parenting for children. I think it's healthy. I think it builds self-confidence. It builds self-reliance. And it builds an attitude of, you know what? If I'm going to have fun, it's on me. I think a lot of the generations now feel like they have to be entertained. They're owed to be entertained. There's an entitlement attitude. I have talked about that before in other philosophy videos. I disagree with it. You go back to the kids, Little Rascals in 1930s. What did they have? Not much. Most of the episodes show them extremely poor and usually hungry. And they're having a blast. Which is another element of Little Rascals we can learn from. You don't have to have money to have fun.
Hey, Wally.
Going back to my upbringing in Florida, going back to my upbringing in Alabama, I was definitely lower middle class in Alabama. I didn't have a lot of money and maybe low class. because my mom was poor and I didn't have a lot. But man, those are some of my funnest, best memories with my friends. What do I need? I need some earthworms. I need a fishing pole. I need to know where the catfish are biting. That was how I was raised in Alabama. I need to go get a box of 22 shells for my Ruger 1022. I'm going to go squirrel hunting, and we're going to cook those squirrels up in a stew. No, I'm not making that up. That's how I was raised in Alabama. Iced tea, cornbread, black eyed peas, and squirrel stew. Not that I love squirrel stew that much. I didn't. I love the black eyed peas. I love the cornbread. I'm a Southern boy. Love growing up that way. It was fun. You don't need a ton of money. Again, Little Rascals has that theme going throughout. They don't have the fancy toys. The one episode where the rich kid drives up in his fire engine on the moving truck, it's so funny watching that. And all the kids, it's so innocent. That's another thing I love about the Little Rascals. They're so innocent and they don't know any better. They just see this amazing toy. They're so poor, they're so destitute, and they just want to climb on the fire engine and play. And it turns out the kid who owns it, a rich kid, he's a snob. He's a, pretty much a you-know-what. A brat, we'll just say that. He wants nothing of it. And so the kids go out and build their own piece of crap ragtag fire engine to compete with his ride, so one of the Little Rascals can win his girl back. That's the whole plot line, which is hilarious. But looking at that, I mean, that's how we were in Alabama too. So like when we had time, we often didn't have money. And so what I would do is go around gathering lumber, make battleships, float them down canals. Again, making guns out of lumber. I made a spaceship out of 2x4s one time. Had a blast. Little Rascals style. Didn't take a lot of money. Let's extrapolate that into adulthood now. These are not just parenting lessons for childhood, but it's everything. How do we approach life as adults? Do we feel like that, oh my gosh, I can't be happy because I don't have enough money? Now, I run a gear adventure show, obviously. I do review a lot of things, and these things cost money. I understand that. But those things aren't going to make you happy. You're either happy or you're not, the way you're put together and the way you approach life and where your value system is. Your value system should be on your friends. It should be on your family, especially. It should be on your children. And maximizing the time you have with those people. It shouldn't be on material possessions because those come and go. You're not going to take those with you anyhow. They don't give happiness. I think you know that. No. Concentrate on the things that matter. And don't feel like because, well, I'm not making six figures, I don't have this much money, I can't be happy. Not true. Go back and watch the Little Rascals just as an example and look at how happy those kids are. You know, one reason why is because they were never told, hey, you can't be happy, you're poor. One of the messages of modern society, isn't it? Hey, you're poor, you must be miserable. I don't know if that was a message, back in the 1930s. Of course, I didn't live during the 1930s. I have researched it a lot. I've done a lot of reading, a lot of video watching to learn about that era. Just prior to the kickoff of World War II, I think, a lot of poor people were happy. Doesn't mean to say, hey, we wouldn't mind going out to eat once in a while. Not saying that, but, loving family, happy, raised with good morals. Yeah, there was a lot of that going on in the 1930s. A lot during the Depression. That generation that came out of the Depression, they were forever influenced by what they went through, by the way. A lot of them were very good with money, almost stingy with money. I've known some myself. And they were very easy to please. Because I've known people from the Depression era, from the 1930s, that even after they made it big, so to speak, they had some. In one case, I know a person had at least $1 million more. He lived very frugally. Almost too frugally, if you ask me. I mean, he could have used his money to the betterment of his own family, and he didn't. Another subject. But he's frugal. But he was always happy, as far as I know. So money does not always lead to happiness. Little Rascals. Another lesson you'll get watching this, and I love it, and you guys know I'm an animal lover, always have been, especially a dog lover, and if a cat has a really good personality, I love cats too, but it has to have a good personality. Big dog lover, though. Dogs are family. Just watch Little Rascals. I mean, if you're an animal lover, just watching Petey, who is their pit bull, I think it was a mix. It might have been a purebred. Hard to tell. And there are several dogs that played Petey through the years, of course. Precious, though, how he interacts, and especially Weezer with Petey. Oh my gosh, it just melts your heart. How good that dog is with Weezer, the little boy. I think if we're drawing in similarities, I think we're the same way. I think the modern generation looks at our dogs the same way they did. Just using Little Rascals as an example, the way they did back then, that they loved their dogs. And Allie is still alive, if in case you're wondering. At least when I'm filming this video, she's getting up there in years. She is our female black lab. She's hard of hearing. She's kind of developed her own different personality as she's gotten on in years, as dogs often do. But she's still family, and we love them. And getting back to parenting, I think the lessons we can learn from our animals are legion, especially your young children. And I think having a pet in the family, like you see in Little Rascals, is it's great companionship and sometimes protection for the child. Because if that dog can bond to the child, which they show in Little Rascals a lot, then it's protection. Yes, it's constant companionship. It's understanding when that child goes through hard times. We all go through hard times, misunderstandings, sad times, and you'll see that a lot in Little Rascals, and that is adorable once again. But if you integrate a dog, maybe a cat or some other type of animal, and have your child take care of that animal, it will develop within him or her a sense of empathy. And we did that with our children. And our kids are both animal lovers. They're very empathetic with all animals, with all animal life. I think that makes our society better. I've known people, I think you have too, that, for whatever reason, they're disconnected, don't like animals, hate dogs. And I think they're missing out a lot in life. And in some cases, how they treat other human beings is indicative of their lack of experience with animals. And I have a relative on my side, I won't say who, that falls in that category. Mrs. Nutnfancy and I talk about all the time. I think animals are a very important part of growing up. What we can learn from Little Rascals. Next up, what we can learn from our gang is that bullies always get their own. Bullies always get their own. I love that about Little Rascals. Understand, of course, it's in the 1930s, and the audience, when they would go and watch these shows, this was before television, so they would go to a theater and watch these, and they loved them. They want a happy ending. And I think audiences now are a little bit different. They don't always have to have a happy ending. But a really good movie where right is right and wrong is wrong, and wrong gets his own in the end, people like that. That's what John Wick is all about, the John Wick series of movies. It's a revenge movie, yes. It is over the top and unrealism, yes. It's fun, though, and it's entertaining along the lines of bullies getting their own, right? Oh, speaking of dogs, in John Wick 1, the whole thing is him getting revenge on his dog that was killed. What's a better revenge plot than that? It's a movie. It's not real. We understand that. But seeing bullies get their own in Little Rascals is awesome. One reason it's awesome is because I think all of us, in some level or another, and myself going through both grade school, junior high, and a little bit in high school, not too much, have seen bullies not get their own. And so when we go and watch a show where the bullies get, and finally his just comeuppance, his just rewards, it's funny. It's hilarious. Like the episode when they steal our gang's lemonade, and it turns out they made it with something, I forget what it was, like saltpeter or something. And his lemonade stand gets shut down because he stole from our gang, the bully. So, can we draw a parallel in real life? Do bullies always get their own? Not really. Having the bully get his own is very satisfying for the audience. right? And there's always a morality lesson in a lot of what happens in Little Rascals. And the lesson here is don't be bullies. Don't treat people the way you don't want to be treated. Hey, I like people to be nice to me. Then be nice to people. Hey, I don't want to be beat up and smacked in the face. Then don't smack others in the face. Hey, I don't want my things stolen. Then don't steal from other people like you see in Little Rascals, taking what they have, their toys, their money. A lesson we can learn? Absolutely. Hopefully we impart that to our children, along with you don't have to have money to be happy. You can have a ball without money. It does help, but you don't need it to be happy in life. And also to accept a sense of risk. Another thing we can learn from Little Rascals. You watch those episodes, and again, I have been binge watching in preparation for this video, because as soon as I pulled out these themes, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many things we've lost in the modern era the way we used to be. And one of them is we overprotect our children. We are overprotective. That we try to shield our children from all risk, and that is wrong, says me. It's not healthy. The world is risky. The world is full of dangerous things. I have a whole video about that. Look up nutnfancy dangerous things in Google. You'll see my video come up, posted 8 years ago. Teach your children how to cope. Teach your children be smart. Teach your children not to put their finger or their tongue in the electrical outlet. Teach them not to jump off tall buildings. But let them manage their own risk. This gets back to the free play principle that we talked about. That getting them out and letting them be free. Not with mommy or daddy looking over their shoulder and dictating every little thing that they have to do or not do. Let them make mistakes. Let them fall down, skin their knees, get cut, get bruised, get banged up. Maybe they'll break a leg in the process. Mine did. He survived. He learned. When you learn, you become a better person. You become a more empathetic person, a wiser person. We need to afford our children and ourselves opportunities to do this. Adventure is where this happens oftentimes. Adventure. Get out of, again, a programmed lifestyle and get out and adventure. I will put a plug in for sports. I don't mean to say, hey, all sports are bad. I think sports are awesome. I think like high school football, playing for kids, is excellent. Or track, or baseball. You learn a lot of lessons there. A lot. Some we're going to hit again here. But I'm saying along with that is an opportunity to be free. And go experience life. Watch Little Rascals and what they are doing. You will come away and go, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like the fire engine episode, they're coming down this huge hill. No one's got a helmet on. The fire engine's going sideways. I'm cringing watching this. Me. I'm like, this is crazy. But, you know, nothing happened. Granted, it's a scripted show. I'm not saying that it isn't. But again, I'm maintaining, and it is foundation to this video, that it was representative of the kind of things kids did. That Hal Roach wanted it to be more honest. And if you think kids didn't put together some type of soapbox derby car and sped down a hill without any helmets on, you're wrong. I know, because I did it. Totally did. Yeah, we built cars, and we had this, in Florida, we had this plastic race car that had a spring-loaded rear wheel. Oh, it was the coolest, one of the coolest toys I ever got for Christmas. And you'd back up, and it would slowly propel you forward, and you'd steer it. Well, we got the wise idea that we're going to hook on a rope to the front of this plastic race car, and we're going to tow it behind our bikes. And that's when the fun really began. My brother, who was my older brother, stronger than me, he would tow this thing fast. And so I'd come sliding around the corner here in Eglin Air Force Base. My dad was often deployed. We were basically raising ourselves. Counter steering this Formula One plastic race car. That's where I learned to steer, by the way. And it was a riot, man. We would just take turns and fight over who gets to run it next. I mean, just skidding. It had those hard plastic big wheel tires that would scrape and screech. Ripping around the corner. Oh my gosh, was that fun. It was risky though. We had no helmets. We smashed into the curb multiple times, got beat up, scraped up. Didn't care. It's awesome. It's okay to get scraped up. I'm not saying put your children in danger, put yourself in danger. I mean, I have another video about that too, is have fun, but don't, destroy yourself. No, I mean, you manage risk to a level that you're acceptable with, but a wise parent, I think, should allow their children to go out and experience the world. Experience the world. Cope with dangerous things. Learn to manage dangerous things. It will give them self-confidence. And then when they are adults in the world, they'll go, you know what? I'm ready. I don't know if a lot of kids are ready because they're so protected. They're so immersed in the electronic world that in the real world, sometimes they're at a loss. They don't know how to cope. I'll give you a quick example along this line. I have a friend of mine. His name's Doug. He's a T-45 instructor down in Pensacola. That's a Hawker jet. So he teaches advanced carrier landing. I'm a pilot, if you don't know, Air Force background stuff. And talking to Doug is very interesting because he's telling me how the kids are doing, and he still does it. It's a reserve job for him. And what he'll tell me is that the kids coming through now are academically very advanced. They're very smart. I mean, they have great grades on paper. They look awesome. But then when they're placed into a challenging flying situation, like landing on the carrier, catching first wire, second wire, I don't know all the Navy terminology, that some of them will struggle and they'll have issues. Maybe it's 1v1, fighters, fighter lingo I'm talking about, 1 versus 1, air-to-air combat. Maybe it's air-to-air or from ground to air ordnance delivery. There's a lot of different phases, instrument formation. And so the student of the Navy in this situation, T-45 student, has to adapt, has to become proficient in all these different phases. And he says, what I'm seeing now with today's generation, a lot of them, is they'll run into problems and they don't know how to cope. I've had several kids, he says, just SIE, self-initiated elimination. Remember, these kids on paper were A students. They filled all the squares. They looked great. And yet when they come across a phase, let's say carrier landing, and they suck at it, they can't get humble, listen to the instructor, and work to improve. They really don't know how to overcome adversity. And so instead of buckling down, believing in themselves, they quit. And they walk away. And he says, that I see more and more in Navy flight training. And he says, these kids, and you should listen to Doug. I wish I could get him to come on camera. He'll say, these kids, they're so busy with video games and texting. And not all that is bad, by the way, but they don't have any balance with real life, adversity, free play, challenges, that when they're faced in real life with something along those lines, they're kind of at a loss of what to do. And he goes, and it breaks my heart. He's like, one kid was awesome. I really liked the kid. I knew he'd be a great Navy pilot. I sat down, I encouraged him. I said, we can get through this. Don't SIE. I've had other students have problems with this phase too. You can do it. And he still punched. He left. That's what I'm talking about. Is that it's not just play. I mean, yeah, it's play, but it's actually preparing your children, preparing ourselves for real life, for life's inevitable disasters, for life's inevitable adversities, of which we all have. How do we cope? Do we just go to the corner, curl up, and start sucking our thumb like some of those kids did? Who knows where they ended up? No, buckle down, say, I'll get through this. I can do this. You believe in yourself. Another lesson, by the way, from Little Rascals, go watch Spanky in action. Believe in yourself when no one else will. Oftentimes, the adults there are like, you guys can't do that. Kids are like, forget about it. We'll do it. Believe in yourself. Speaking of adults, I love another theme from Little Rascals. I love how the officious adults also get their own. Yeah, these are people who roll into your life trying to tell you you can't do it. Again, that's what I started off with the last talking point. That you're having way too much fun. You kids better knock it off. I think it's funny that was present even in the 1930s, because I see that everywhere now in modern society, of people with arms folded going, hey, how dare you have fun? You can't do that. I see it in comments in YouTube. People who are jealous of someone having fun in a video, and so they launch into a hate campaign. You know, because I watch car videos, and people just say, oh, you can't, how dare you a-hole can't. Like, dude, he's just having fun. Who are you to saying, hey, you can't do that? Not hurting anybody. Little Rascals, same thing. We see it all the time. The adults roll in like mean adults often. Scary adults that are mean and vicious. Like there was, so I'm trying to think of which episode I saw it in the orphanage. The lady who was like mean to the children. You can't do this, like a witch. And the children overcame. You know, and oftentimes in life you'll have to do the same thing. People will be naysaying you. They'll say, hey, you're having way too much fun. Or perhaps you're at work and people are trying to control you. The lesson from Little Rascals, I know this is a stretch, but I still like it. Plot your own course. Believe in yourself. Press on. Don't listen to them. Because if you start living your life to please other people, especially people like that are jealous of you, who wish to pull you down, who want you to stay at their level, you'll never achieve success. Ever. You won't. You have to just press on and do the right things. Another thing I get from Little Rascals, and this is really kind of, it's kind of sad really, and that is how good people were, how trustworthy people were back, at least depicted in the series of Little Rascals films. Overall, yeah, we had some people, the naysayers, you know, the mean people, but by and large, most people are good. They're trustworthy. The policeman with a little child who helps them and understands them and speaks with them. The adult who sees the children needing food, who just out of their own pocket pays for food for that child. That is heartwarming. And that's something I wish we could get back to as a country, that we could be so good and giving with each other and attuned to each other's needs. I think there was a lot more of that in the 1930s than there is now. I think in a large way people are very isolated now, whether it's because of media, social media, and they don't really feel a need to interact with people on a personal level. We've lost something. And we should be open to what's going on with the person next to us. Maybe they need some help. Maybe they need a pep talk. Maybe they need a $2 tip, a $5 tip, something to make their day better. People were good back then. People were much more trustworthy, it would seem to me. Can we get back to that? With the acrimony that is so ever present over political issues and everything else, I don't know. I do know this, though, is that overall atmosphere in which we live in the modern era doesn't have to affect how we are. It will work to affect us, and this is a personal battle I fight all the time, but we should always work at being good people, being trustworthy people, being honest people. We say what we mean, we do what we say, that kind of people. Watching Little Rascals and seeing the adults that way, you go, wow, that is really cool. Yeah, back then, your kids could wander in the neighborhoods, no problems. You know, were there some abductions? Well, a couple. You know, Lindbergh, it stands out in my mind, the Lindbergh kidnapping, but overall it was very rare. In a lot of the neighborhoods, especially in the heart of America, people didn't even lock their doors. They didn't have to worry about it. I lived in North Dakota for a number of years, and it was like that up there. You know, you'd go to Walmart back in the early 90s. I don't know how it is now with the oil industry, but now, back then, the early 90s, you know, it's like 10 degrees below zero when you go in shopping. People would just leave their cars running with the doors unlocked in North Dakota, Minot, where I was stationed at the time. No one ever messed with your car. No one ever came and stole stuff from you. You didn't have to worry about it. No one locked their doors in the neighborhoods. It just wasn't an issue. How nice would it be for us to go back to that, where you don't have to constantly live in fear of you getting stolen from, predated, attacked, mugged, kidnapped, killed, raped. Now, are those threats existent everywhere? No, I think still, and they're very rare, actually, and that's good. So I'm not condemning modern life going, oh my gosh, we're at such risk for all these horrible things. That's not what I'm saying. But it was nice. And as I caught myself watching the Little Rascals episodes, I think that was one of the main things that, and it still does. I mean, I can sit down and watch 10 of them in a row. Well, maybe not 10, 3. And I like that about what I'm watching, is the goodness of the United States. The teacher who is kind and loving to her children and cares about her children. You know, the parents who love their children. There are variances, by the way. It's not all peaches and cream in Little Rascals. They show a lot of bad parents too, which I think was representative of the time. Parents that would beat their children, spank them all the time. Not that I feel that spanking is off the table for parenting. I don't. It just should be measured and rarely used if and when, but it's in a parenting toolkit. But definitely not abuse. Definitely not something that would hurt the child or damage them psychologically. There are parents like that, for sure. There's a lot of drinking going on, a lot of alcohol abuse, and a lot of beating going on. I have no doubt. But I'm talking about the overarching mores of the society. They were pretty good, I think. They really were. You know, can we go back? Will we go back? I'll get to the question. I mean, hey, you know, are we better off now than we were back then? Now you see where I've gone with this. It's not all about technology, about our cool cars, our cool computers, YouTube, social media, all the ease of life that we have with modern conveniences. There's a lot more to that question, and I think we're starting to talk about it right now. Another thing from Little Rascals, and this is life in general, but I love how the Hal Roach, when he attacked this, he didn't shy away from it. And that is, life can be unfair, and often is unfair, and it's just the way it is. And what you'll see in a lot of episodes is kids dealing with it. And they'll go, this sucks. This isn't right that, you know, we don't have food, that we're being treated this way, that we're locked out of here, that we're being rejected, that we're being bullied. And that's just the way it is, that life is unfair. I think the takeaway for us, and especially our children, is that expect it. You know, expect it. You can't really control life's unfairness. It is what it is. But what you can do is control your reaction to the unfairness and how it flavors your approach to life. You can either get closed up and get bitter and blame all your life's failures on the unfairness that's always out there, or you can just acknowledge it and say, that's part of the program. That's just the way things go, and you press on. And I hope we all do that. There's times, I'm sure all of us with life's unfairness, we just want to quit. We go, you know, maybe it's at work and we're not getting that promotion we wanted. And again, it's, I think, an honest representation. So it wasn't always Hal Roach going, oh, all the parents are great. No, there was the dad who was not being nice at all to his child, Weezer, if I'm remembering that episode right. So sometimes now, you know, in the 2010s, we go, oh my gosh, things are so bad right now for me. Well, go back and watch Little Rascals. You'll see plenty of that going on there all the time. Another thing I love about Little Rascals, and this really stems from Hal Roach as a person, and that is, despite skin color, despite body type, despite economic background, all the kids got along. All the kids got along. You would see Stymie playing with Weezer, Stymie's one of the black kids, playing with Spanky, the other kids, and they weren't treated any differently. It was like I've just watched 20 episodes, and not in even one episode did I hear race being mentioned. So you had Buckwheat, Stymie. If I go back to my own upbringing in Florida and Alabama, that's how we were too. That kids from different economic backgrounds, different colors, we just didn't really care. It wasn't an issue. What we cared about is that person a dick or not. If he's cool, hey, you can hang out with us. We didn't care what color you are. We didn't care if you're fat, skinny. That's our gang. That's Little Rascals, and it was cutting edge that way. You know, here in society, we constantly hear for lack of a better term, I guess, identity politics all the time. That you're part of this race, you're part of this subgroup, that subgroup, and we should all separate and kind of create our own camps and our own bastions and seek different whatevers, in society. Special favors or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it. I think it's a lot better approach doing the Little Rascals approach. We're all the same. We're Americans. We hang out together. Don't talk about skin color. Don't talk about any of that stuff. The girls are playing with the boys, are rough and tumbling. No one's treated any differently. Everybody listen to everybody else. Watch several episodes of our gang, Little Rascals, at least under Hal Roach's direction. You'll see that play out. Equality amongst the kids. You almost come away from that and go, well, why did that change? I mean, what made it so tumultuous in the years to come, like the 40s and 50s? And I'm not going to say there weren't issues back then. Definitely there were. But let's look at now. Are there issues? I think we'd be a lot better off to not discuss that stuff and just get along as a whole people, as an American people. Latinos, blacks, whites, Orientals. Don't discuss race. Go watch Little Rascals. What can we learn from Little Rascals? Watch those episodes and see if number one, did those kids get along? Number two, was there favoritism one way or another shown in the episodes? No, there wasn't. And do you think it's really the question is, do you think it's representative of society as a whole back then? Again, I didn't live during the 1930s, and I'm sure there are lots of examples of racism, of favoritism, of perhaps sexism back then. But knowing what I know from my research, albeit imperfect, I think people pretty much got along. Let's go back in the South in the 1970s. That was pretty much the case. I know, because I lived that. And people got along pretty darn good. Mixed races, we got along pretty good. Not always, but usually we got along pretty good. What can we learn from the Little Rascals? Well, a gift from Hal Roach is be colorblind. Don't bring up race. Maybe someone shows up this video and they're going to bring a modern interpretation to this, and they will strive to reinforce subsets and reinforce whatever political agenda they have. And I think that's one reason why we are here now. And this video is so interesting as we compare and contrast. As a lot of people won't let those issues go. They are very angry about them, and they want to exact a vengeance, exact a punishment, and divide America. And I've never been that way. I think Little Rascals, Stymie's one of my favorites, dude. That kid is hilarious. What was his real name? I may have written it down. Here it is. Matthew Stymie Beard. He's the little black kid in Little Rascals. And by the way, the black actors in Little Rascals, as they went into adulthood, later on, maybe there's some episodes like in the MGM era where they go, whoa, you can't do that. I mean, that's kind of racist. All the black actors that grew up under the direction of Hal Roach fiercely and staunchly defended him, said that is not how it was. He's like, we feel like that was an honest representation of the kids of that era. And not one of them, to my knowledge, ever came back and said, oh, yeah, I really regret having participated in Little Rascals. Not one of them. They said all the kids were depicted honestly, where it's a chubby kid, it's an Oriental kid, the girls, they were just, as Stymie put it, just a broad representation of America. Race, body, size don't matter. We should all get along. A good episode for that is School's Out. School's Out. Go watch a few series or a few episodes of Little Rascals and see if you see these themes emerging. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And maybe you have additional ones. And I recommend that come into comment and pull out other themes that you see from Little Rascals, comparisons and contrasts today of what we can learn from it, and then name an episode and the year it came out so people can go look that up and watch it. I'm not saying the Little Rascals was perfect, and I'm not saying that it was a completely, unfettered, honest depiction of America in the 1930s. What I'm saying is that It was a very honest slice of life from what I know to be a really good man, Hal Roach. And that to this day, it endures. To this day, there are people like myself that will go and watch these short films that he's put together and watch the innocence, the adventure, the subjection to dangerous things and risk, interactions with bullies, overcoming bullies, interaction with unfairness, the happiness levels, even though you have nothing to be happy about. These are enduring messages. Enduring. And it still draws people because it actually, I feel, talks to our souls. And we want to have more of that. We want to have more of that goodness and be a part of it. But it's out there, here on YouTube. Like this video, it's free of charge. And it's called Little Rascals. Thanks for watching. See you later.